Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of the Oasis Focus and Finance Show. I'm your host, Shafiq Morton. As always, it's good to be with you. In today's show, we're going to discuss something called financial freedom. How am I financially free without giving up on the essentials of life? And how do I create a sustainable lifestyle for myself financially? To help us understand this concept today are Naweed Ashtiker and Neville Erambo. Neville, bonjour, and Naweed, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Shafiq.
C'est bien. Naweed, let's start off with you. Give us a definition, give us the whole landscape about financial freedom. How do I go about becoming a financially free human being?
Before we actually go into how to create financial freedom, let us, for the benefit of the audience, unpack what is financial freedom. Now, broadly speaking, financial freedom, also referred to as financial independence, is generally used to describe the state of living whereby somebody doesn't need to actively go out to work to be able to meet his expenses. Now, how does that come about? People obviously then generate income from a passive source, so either through rental income or through income from their investments. But very important to note that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And what I mean by that is one person might generate 15,000 Rand in passive income, but his monthly expense is only 10,000 Rand. That person is then financially free. Whereas you have another individual who would earn 30 or 40,000 Rand from a passive source, but his monthly expenses is 60 or 70,000 Rand. That person is then not actually financially free. So again, I'm going to emphasize the point that it's not a one-size-fits-all situation, but something that needs to be tailored to each and every individual. So now let's look at how we can go about achieving the financial freedom. The first thing, and most importantly, we need to understand that this is your goal. You need to commit to this goal. If you're not prepared to commit to this goal, you'll never be able to achieve what you want to achieve, because you are always going to get sidetracked and fall by the wayside. The second step would be to consult with a financial advisor to develop a plan. This plan can also be seen as your financial guide, and this is what's going to be able to guide you through the different courses as you go along with your financial plan. It also will be able to tell you where you need to increase, where you need to decrease, and if any curveballs are thrown your way, how you can adjust it to be able to come out to the same goal. Importantly, again, Shafiq, we need to be able to have a budget. We need to be able to see what's coming in and what's going out. We've often spoke about the difference between the needs and the wants. If we need to trim on certain places to be able to achieve that goals, we need to be able to know where to be able to trim them. Also, you might get a new job and your income might increase. This is the perfect chance to be able to increase your contributions into these areas. And thirdly, your plan needs to have a degree of flexibility in there as well, because we never know what life may have in store for us, and curveballs are constantly being thrown, whether it's a new job, the birth of a new child, marriage, a new home, death of a loved one. And our financial plan needs to be able to have that flexibility so that we can make those changes without being affected too much.
Right, Neville, you're a financial advisor. You're the man that lays the paving stones for the path towards financial freedom. Give us some of the essential details that you would have to include in such an idea of financial freedom.
Shafiq, many would argue that the creation of a financial plan is the first step towards financial independence. What I mean is that once you create this plan, in terms of you need to have a clear goal in mind which will guide you, give you a vision in the kind of a life that you would like to live. And you realize that the very first aspect in establishing a financial plan or in formulating a financial plan is to establish financial goals. And when you make a list of the things that you need to achieve in life, you are going to realize that they have financial implications. They have finances associated with them. Being it, if you are aiming, your desire is to purchase a residential property or send your children to the best schools or to travel for Hajj or Umrah, you're going to realize that you need a financial commitment. And this commitment in questions, once the goals are set, you need to achieve them in a relatively long period of time. In other words, what I'm also trying to say that by achieving them in the relatively long period of time, the commitment will mean that you need to adjust and adapt your behavior so that within a sustainable length of time, you can achieve your goals.
Now, you've mentioned adaptation of behavior in this whole plan. How do we understand it? How do we adapt our behavior in terms of trying to get financial freedom?
Let's take an example of someone wanting to improve their fitness. The first thing they need to do is to set a goal. This goal is going to enable them to know when their objective is being achieved. We take an example of somebody aiming to run the Two Oceans Marathon. So instead of them getting up each day to run long distances and exercising, there are some adaptations that they need to start inculcating. For example, eating the right food, which will give them stamina, getting the right equipment, meaning the right sport shoes. They need to learn the simple do and don'ts of running. Most importantly, you realize that eventually family and work life will be impacted. So they need to adjust in relation to that in terms of striking that balance. They need to be committed. Instead of them going to the gym and running a couple of hours in the day, they need to do something else like accepting. In terms of acceptance is once they see that this is what they want to attain, they need to commit themselves. And when you commit yourself, there is that mind set. You change your mind a little bit, and by accepting that change, it's in view for them to achieve a bigger plan or goal. And it's in the same light, when you create a financial plan or you have a goal in mind, you need to adapt your behavior in terms of being disciplined for your savings and investments. You do not need to be tempted to do impulse purchases or cash in your savings when you are not willing to, because you need to spend. Everything needs to be planned. You also need to know your finances and your budget each month. And another behavioral thing you can do, monitor do your checks and balances. By doing your check and balances, you are going to know if the goal that you've set for yourself, you are in line with that, or you need to do a little bit more in order to boost that and reach where you are aiming to.
Now Neville has laid the pathway, but what mechanisms would we use to go further down the pathway towards financial freedom?
We've determined our goals, so we've got this picture that is painted. And how do we now get from here to where we need to be? Now, two important characteristics when it comes to my point of view. The first thing is, for each and every individual, we need to determine your risk tolerance or your risk profile. And this is, again, it's unique. If you look at somebody that might be younger in age, automatically we think, he could be, highly aggressive with his investments, but his personal nature, him as a person might be very risk averse. So it's important to sit down with the person and try and figure out and determine what the person's risk tolerance or risk profile is. Once we've got that sorted out, we now know what the tolerance is and what instruments we can use and what types of investments we can use and the products available to satisfy that risk profile. Another important consideration, Shafiq, is the investment term or the time frame that we're looking at. Now, typically these are determined by your life phase or your life stage. And what I mean by life stage is somebody at my age, you younger, maybe at the beginning part of your career. Look at somebody at your age, Shafiq, maybe coming to retirement or...
Okay, I was going to say I was young, but we'll carry on.
No, but coming back to that, Shafiq, so investment term is a very important component of your investment objective. These are traditionally looked at as longer term investments, and there's real value over the long term. If you have the mindset of having a long term approach, it negates the short term volatility that you experience. And over a period of time, the actual short term volatility becomes negligible when you look at the gains that can be derived over a longer period of time. Also, the effect of compounding. Every year, the longer you are in that investment, the greater the effect of compounding is, and that's a very important thing to consider. So again, risk profile and investment term.
Now, I think the next issue is risk tolerance. How do we balance all of this with the scenario we've created so far?
So Shafiq, we've touched on what is financial freedom, we've touched on how to go about getting there, we've spoken about risk tolerance and investment term. The next step is to start putting all of these together and designing an investment portfolio. So how do we go about designing an investment portfolio? There are a number of products and investments out there that can be used to obtain our goal or to achieve that goal based on the current risk profile that we've set for ourselves. Now, these products would include collective investment schemes, retirement annuities, endowments, preservation funds, whatever they may be, and they will be designed specifically to your unique circumstances. Once we've chosen the appropriate product, we need to decide what type of assets we want to hold in those products. Now, those types of assets would include local equities, being South African equities. We have global equities, property investments. We've got money market investments. We've got fixed income investments. We've even got, in the Sharia space, Islamic investments that we want to put in. That is all based on your ethical preferences as well as your risk profile that we've spoken about earlier. When it comes down to constructing the perfect asset allocation, and what I mean by asset allocation is actually the right mix or the ideal mix of the different types of assets. It's something that should be consulted again with a professional, because that is the core crux of this whole matter. Selecting the ideal mix of your asset allocation. And then very important is to stick with that allocation, not chopping and changing or going what is investment vogue right now or what your friend or your neighbor has told you to do. I often find that when people stick to the plan and they're consistent with that plan, they end up attaining that goals. But people that end up chopping and changing and moving with hearsay, they alter their plan, and then to come back to that plan and rebalance that can become a very costly exercise, Shafiq.
Naweed has mentioned some important issues, hasn't he, Neville? But
Yes,
I mean, you're on the coalface. Can you give us a practical example of what we're talking about?
We have plenty of examples, Shafiq, but I'm going to take one of these cases to discuss for our viewers. Mm-hmm. We have a doctor, and for the purpose of this example, I'm going to call him Dr. Salim Tayob. Let me give you a little...
So the real Salim Tayob, don't worry.
He
it's
doesn't.
not you. Okay.
Yes, it's not. So,
fictional character.
Sure.
Right.
To give you an insight or an indication of who he is background, he is 55 years old. He is a trauma surgeon working at the emergency ward of a major hospital, and he is also a lecturer at medical school. He has a wife who stays at home and 3 children. All his children are at university and are currently staying at home. In terms of property, the family have a double-story home which they own fully. They have an apartment which is rented out and a holiday home in the coastal town of Hermanus. The family also own 3 cars. Now, I know that if our listeners are tuned in, they should be thinking, but he is a doctor and it's a norm for him to have accumulated all these assets. But what I want you to know is that he did not get these assets overnight. He planned for them, mm-hmm. He worked very hard, and so he has achieved them in terms of having financial freedom. And I would like to highlight that as a result of his foresight, this has set him up when he eventually retires, because he's going to have financial independence. So when he retires, instead of him probably scratching his head what he's going to do, he owns the quality of his life. He can decide what to do and when not to do it. He's not going to settle for anything less because of his finances. Let me move on to his actual finances now that we know who he is. Mm-hmm. Dr. Tayob earns 150,000 Rand per month after tax. His apartment earns a further 12,000 Rand in rental earnings per month, while he owns 2 of his properties. The holiday home in Hermanus was purchased off-plan, and he is paying the bond monthly. He contributes about 20,000 Rand towards this per month, which is a bit more than the actual bond amount, as he wants to complete payment in about 10 years. He pays almost 200,000 Rand per year towards his children's university fees, which is about 17,000 Rand per month. He also sees to all household expenses, which works out to 15,000 per month, and he provides his wife with a monthly allowance of 20,000 Rand. He pays 5,000 per month towards medical cover. He also has what he calls a family fund. used for emergencies and even holidays, as well as unforeseen expenses, which he contributes 15,000 every month. This leaves him with a disposable income of 70,000 rand per month, a lot of which he contributes to various forms of savings. In terms of his savings, he has an investment account with the Oasis Crescent Equity Fund sitting at 5 million rand, something he started 18 years ago with Oasis, and makes regular contributions, which are not huge amounts, and that is important. A little bit consistently over a long period of time amounts to something tangible. He has offshore investment with Oasis totaling 1.5 million rand. He started that 5 years ago and makes regular contributions. He has a preservation fund with Oasis of 4,980,000 rand. This was accumulated when he worked and changed jobs over the years, but he never cashed in and just let it grow. He also has a retirement annuity account with Oasis, which he started 5 years ago to make the most of his tax benefits. This retirement annuity stands at 1.2 million rand. His emergency fund stands at 900,000 rand, and he keeps that in the Oasis Crescent Income Fund. Currently, his overall savings stands at 13,580,000. Now, Shafiq, let's look at the future of Dr. Tayob. Dr. Tayob is only going to retire at age 70. Well, that is the plan. He is fit and strong, and as you know, doctors do practice, particularly those in the academic field, because they want to continue teaching others into their golden years. So we're looking at another 15 years of growth for his savings. Assuming growth of 6%, which is conservative, and no monthly contributions over the next 15 years, his combined funds will be as follows. The Oasis Crescent Equity Fund will be 11,982,790 rand and 97 cents. The International Feeder Fund, which is an offshore fund, will be 3,594,874 rand and 27 cents. The Preservation Fund will be 11,934,859 rand and 80 cents, and the Retirement Annuity will be 2,875,869 rand and 83 cents. That gives a total of 30,388,357 and 89 cents. Let me take this a step further. I know that Dr. Tayob put funds away every month, and for illustration purposes, let's say he saves 10,000 rand per month into each of his existing savings plans, which grows at 6% over the remaining 15 years. The Crescent Equity Fund will grow to approximately 15 million rand. The feeder fund, which is an offshore fund, will grow to approximately 6 million rand. The Preservation Fund, there is no addition because you only preserve when you change job. The Retirement Annuity will grow to approximately 5.8 million rand, giving a total of approximately 39 million rand.
Right, Naweed, the doctor is obviously in a healthy situation financially, health-wise as well, I'm sure. But he must have had lifestyle changes. I mean, he got married, he had children. So how do we understand the road to financial freedom in terms of lifestyle changes?
Shafiq, before I touch on that, I just want, on the example that Neville has just given us, coming back to my first point. Now, I know Dr. Salim Tayob is fictional, but do you see how we could break down what he earns after tax, where the money goes, how it goes, what goes for what? So when he looks at it, he can actually see, you know, X amount goes here, X amount goes there. That's part of constructing that that financial plan that we spoke about earlier. And it's very important because, I mean, so often we sit with people and you ask them about the expenses and it's like X amount here, X amount there. There's not a defined or a definitive amount that they could put there. Yes, you've got your fixed expenses and you've got your variable expenses, but that's the starting point. Now, look, it is important to acknowledge that life does change over time. There are certain things that we do not have control over. You might get a protracted illness, you might lose your job. There are so many things that are so uncertain that we have absolutely no control over. That is why it's important to review your financial plan, whether it's every 6 months or even on a yearly basis, to make sure that your lifestyle is able to keep up with your plan. Now, we gave a very bird's eye view example of Dr. Tayob, but let's assume that Dr. Tayob had gone through a situation where he was negatively affected. Dr. Tayob would have gone back every time he adjusted his plan to be able to counteract the effect of the life change that may have been thrown at him. So let's assume he'd been in a position where he didn't earn the income that he would have. He would then need to say, look, instead of putting 3 kids through university, giving each one of them their own car and letting them stay on res, in order to maintain the quality of lifestyle that they were having, you could have said, no, you all 3 are going to stay at home. I'm going to buy you guys 1 car, and you need to share and be able to tolerate each other's schedules. But not only from a financial point of view is this making sense for him, but it's also teaching the kids a life lesson when they're growing up. Just another example, I mean, you know, do we send our kids to a private school or do we send them to a public school? Now, if we're going to send them to a private school, at what cost, and can we afford that? How often do we go back and look for better rates on our household insurance or our vehicle insurance? Now, you know, saving 100 or 200 or 300 rand might not be a lot in real terms, but as Neville said, small amounts over a long period of time, they actually add up. And that is consistent in what we've seen in this case of Dr. Tayob.
Absolutely. As we start to close, Neville, you can have the privilege of the closing comment on this. As a financial advisor, your closing comments on somebody walking the path to financial freedom.
For somebody walking the path to financial freedom, I'm just going to, Naweed indicated earlier on, small amounts, they eventually grow up. And you realize from what I just previously mentioned that Dr. Tayob has accumulated a lot of savings, which he has control over. And you realize that these savings, when he eventually retires, he has some extra money. And with his funds that are set up with Oasis, he's not only going to cover his daily expenses, but he's going to comfortably live off all this. Yes, we know undoubtedly some years along the line, he's going to have additional expenses like marriage and also holidays, but he is going to see through them without any stress. And the takeaway for our listeners, and I stress again, I've used the example of Dr. Tayob, but the principle applies to everybody. Mm-hmm. Don't spend beyond your means. Your income must always exceed your expenditure. If you have debt, get rid of the debt. And true financial independence or financial freedom means that you save happily, you live off life within your means, and you have control of your future lifestyle, how you want it to be.
Neville Erambo, soon off to the London office. Naweed Ashtiker, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shafiq.
Thank you, Shafiq. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. And that concludes this week's edition of the Oasis Focus on Finance show, in which we had a look at financial freedom. A special thanks to our guests, Neville Erambo and Naweed Ashtiker. Should you wish to watch this or any of our other shows, you can log into the Oasis Crescent YouTube channel. Should you wish to contact Oasis, you can dial 0860 100 786 or email info@oasiscrescent.com. Until next time, I'm Shafiq Morton. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.